thanks to everyone for signing in early and joining us today. We know that there's a number of choices for user groups presenting virtually around the world throughout the week, so we really appreciate you spending time with Phoenix and Tucson Tableau User Group. A little bit about what's going to be going on today and housekeeping. So you are all participants are muted. If you do have any questions for our presenters or panelists within the user group, please use the Q&A panel. If you want to chat, provide some great comments, whatever, use the chat feature. This session will be recorded and it will be made available on Tableau's YouTube channel probably within the next day or so. So be on the lookout for that. This deck will also be shared out to respective user groups. So if you do want a copy, you'll be able to download the content in its entirety. A little bit about who we are. My name is Michael Perillo. I am a leader of the Phoenix Tableau User Group. I've been doing this since 2013. Really excited to have everyone again joining us today, and especially excited to have our sister city, Tucson, joining us again for a virtual meeting. And I'll allow Christian to introduce himself and the rest of his team.
Hello, welcome. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, so Nicole couldn't make it, unfortunately, but we do have Natalia here. And yeah, we had a great team. I'm excited that the picture on this slide by my name has this cool little blue badge. Cool to be recognized as a Tableau ambassador for doing something that's incredibly fun, like helping to lead a user group. So yeah, group's been in existence for about 1.5 years. Got a great team, and thanks for joining us, all of you who are attending. Natalia?
Thank you, Christian. Thank you. And congrats on the ambassador. So Michael, you also have that logo. Yeah, thank you everyone from all over the world. I see in the chat. So excited to have you and hope we have a great time.
Fantastic. All right, thanks everyone. So today's agenda, we're going to go through some announcements and updates for the next 15 minutes or so. We're going to kick off then our first presenter with Ken, talking about the Tableau data model. We'll take a break shortly after that. We'll come back. We'll do that Tableau Trivia. Again, hopefully you got that information down. If not, no worries. We will post that up again. And then we'll kick off our second presenter with Joshua on how to tame your data dragon with Tableau. And then after that, we'll have some Q&A, meeting wrap up. Any other questions, comments, we'll definitely take that. All right. So Tableau does a lot of great things in the community, and we want to highlight a lot of what's going on. If you're new to Tableau or you're a seasoned veteran and you want to participate in a mentorship program, whether being a mentee or a mentor, we've got a great program for you at mentoringmeetup.com. The 3 individuals listed here have established this. This is a way for you to engage, teach and learn, have great impact, connect with some really amazing people through the data community. This is, again, wonderful if you're brand new to Tableau or you're looking to upskill in a certain area, whether that be in Tableau Prep, data viz, data storytelling, maybe Tableau server, APIs, whatever that might be. This is a great place to establish a relationship with a mentor or become a mentor to a mentee. So please sign up at mentoringmeetup.com. If you've been impacted by COVID, there's another great program out there called the Tableau Talent Finder. So if you are looking for work and you've been impacted, please go out to that Tableau Talent Finder. There's a bit.ly link. Bit.lys are all case sensitive, so be mindful of that. If you are an employer or you are looking to hire someone, this is, again, a great place for you to post some jobs and get some really amazing talent in the Tableau community. The Phoenix Tableau user group is on Slack. We have opened up our platform to our users. If you want to join in discussions, get some one-on-one feedback, or just have engaging conversations, please join us on our Slack channel. Again, the bit.ly link is there. We will share all these links and slide deck again after that. So if you don't have a chance right now, definitely do so after. All right, Christian, you want to talk about some of your upcoming meetings for the rest of the year?
Actually, I think Natalia has done a great job of finding us a really good presenter for our upcoming October meeting. And she's been in more contact with them than I have. So I'll just turn it over to Natalia if she wants to say a few words about our October 21st upcoming meeting.
Sure, I'll be happy to. Yeah, for October 21st, we're gonna have the University of Arizona research group. So they are our data gurus at the university. They are the people I go to all the time for help. So they were very gracious to agree to join us. They will be talking about the fact book, which is information that the university needs to present nationally. So that's very excited that we're gonna have them. And yeah, that's one of our presenters for October.
All right, fantastic. All right, for those of you looking to see what we're doing next in Phoenix, we will be meeting next on October 22nd. We will be devoting the entire meeting to data dev. So this will be a combination of presentation and a lot of hands-on. So if you're interested in learning more about Tableau's data dev, APIs, automation, things like that, do definitely join us. In November, we will be doing another collaboration with another city, and more of those details will be available at the usergroup.phoenixtug.com. All right, so a little bit of sad news. So as you might have seen, I am the only one listed right now as our user group leader for Phoenix. The rest of our team, again, sadly, but fortunately, has moved on. And this is one of the great things about Tableau engagement and the things that we do with our user group. We've had a very strong Tableau user group leadership team for a number of years now. Ann, Jackson, Josh, Justin, Jeff, Suraj. With all that's going on, they have become so increasingly busy and in demand that trying to focus time in the Tableau user group has become a little bit challenging. So they've decided to step away for the 2021 term, which will open up some spots for new users, and we'll definitely promote that going forward. If anyone's interested, we'll have a submission request. But we do want to thank them for all their years of contributions, experience, growing this community, engagement. Ann Jackson's just been on fire, nominated again for Tableau's ambassador in social media, as well as a Zen master. Josh, Justin, Jeff, Suraj are doing some amazing things in the Tableau space as well. So this is one of the things that why I love doing the things we do with the user group. And we hope that if you're just starting out, that you stick with us and you engage and you upskill. And hopefully some great things come about from that. We do want to recognize the amazing accomplishments of our Arizona team. We talked about earlier those little logos, icons, if you will, on our pictures. This is a Tableau Ambassador badge. Now, the mission of the Tableau Ambassador program is to recognize community members who connect, collaborate, and share, because they realize that the value of helping people to see and understand Now, Tableau Ambassadors, they embody the spirit of the voice of the community, and they keep us honest, and they push us to do more. They teach and share while fostering positive and supportive behavior within this community. And they give credit where credit is due, and that's important. And they help nurture inclusivity. They shine, and they focus the spotlights on new voices in this community, whether it be on social media, user groups, on the forums, and they help innovate ideas, and they allow all of us to reach more people to help them see and understand data. In the Tableau Ambassador spectrum, there's 6 tiers. There's community forum ambassadors, social media ambassadors, user group leader ambassadors, Tableau public ambassadors, student ambassadors, data dev ambassadors. So what we see here is we've got user group leaders, social media, community forums, and student. And I just want to take about a few minutes. We've got Mujahid on the line, we've got Christian on the line, myself, and I just want to reflect. So I'll start with Mujahid. You're a brand new student ambassador. If you want to take yourself off on mute and just give some reflection on what this means and how is it really driving your Tableau career professionally and personally. What does that mean?
Hello everyone. Firstly, I'm really excited to be here. So it's been around close to 3 years since I first started using Tableau. It was back when I did a summer internship, a data analyst summer internship. So since then, I sort of fell in love with Tableau. I mean, the ease with which you could create data visualizations, that is something which made me like Tableau. And it's an incredible opportunity. I feel really honored to be recognized as a student ambassador. And since one of the biggest takeaways from this opportunity, I feel, is that I'm actually TAing for a undergrad visualization class this semester. So I hope to inspire the students whom I'll be tutoring and mentoring and encourage them to get certified.
Amazing. And congratulations again to you. I'm especially proud being an ASU alum. So
thank you, Michael. Congratulations to you too.
Absolutely. Christian, congratulations to you. You guys are rocking it in Tucson. So can you talk a little bit about same thing, reflection, what this means, how's it helping?
Yeah, I just think it's been amazing. I mean, initially, I started using the tool several years ago. Before you know it, you sort of take for granted the experience that's accumulated, but you realize you have gained experience, you have gained some expertise, and then you realize you have something to give back. And so for me, it just started as talking to some people at my alma mater, the U of A, bear down, saying, hey, what are you guys doing for data visualization in tech? Is there any way I can help out? And so there's an avenue for giving back and sort of building a community and getting people excited about data that way. And then an opportunity opened up for the local user group, and I said, yeah, I'll join in. And so it's kind of been just one thing leading to another. And just the user group ambassador title is kind of just the icing on the cake, unexpected recognition. Just something as a result of doing something that you would already do, that you love doing. So great to be recognized and great to be part of an amazing group of people.
Yeah, appreciate that. Again, congratulations to everyone. Again, there's 6 tiers. There's ways for you to engage in pretty much everything from the student ambassadorships, community forums. If you're not on the Tableau community, please engage. There's a lot of great, people out there helping answer questions. Deepak, again, another ambassador. We've got Ken on the line, another ambassador. He'll present, but whether it be social media, and pushing stuff out on Twitter, Instagram, social media. Christian, myself with the user groups, helping to grow and engage, foster all that learning. And Mujahid, like I said, doing some amazing things at ASU, and just really looking forward to seeing how everyone is going to grow and move forward. So if this is something that you and the community are interested in learning more about, is how do I become an ambassador? How do I get engaged? Like I said, there's at least 6 different ways for you to start doing some amazing things in the Tableau community, get recognized, and participate. So, and please do that. And again, Christian's just on fire. So the 2020 Ironviz qualifier finalists. We've got Alex and Simon, and of course Christian. Christian, I'll just kind of, swing it back to you again. This is 2020 is kind of like your year of just rocking out. I know that you've got a lot going on with Ironviz coming up. We'll probably talk a little bit more about what that is, if for those of you that are new to Tableau and don't know. Maybe you want to give just a quick minute or two overview on what that is and what you're doing.
Yeah, so for those of you that have never been a part of the Ironviz experience at TC, it's basically 3 contestants on stage with their sous-visors, which is basically a representative from the company helping them or helping the audience understand what's going on with the design. But you're basically building a data visualization in 20 minutes in front of a huge audience. And so, along with that comes all sorts of pressure, development, training, preparation. So that's what I've been giving myself to this week, last week, just trying to get ready for October 7th when we go live. So yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Trying to do my best to represent Arizona. Michael's made it very clear to me that if I don't bring the Ironviz trophy back to Arizona, actually, he hasn't said what, but failure's not an option. He's made that very clear.
Not an option. We're all rooting for you. So again, congratulations on this. This is absolutely amazing. And if you do want to see Christian and the rest of the participants compete, you will be able to do that by signing up for the Tableau conference. This is a virtual free event that Tableau is putting on October 6th, 7th, and 8th. Ironviz will take place on October 7th. In the chat, I put the link to sign up, tc20.tableau.com. Please go out, do that. Again, this is free for you to sign up. There is no cost. A lot of great activities. Schedule and agenda will be rolled out probably in the next week or so, but you can take a look and see all the festivities, events, and things that they have lined up for this amazing virtual event. All right, we are going to kick things off now with Ken. Ken is going to be presenting more or less on demystifying the Tableau data model. For those of you that do not know Ken, Ken's an analytics architect, a strategist, and evangelist with 20 years of experience in information technology. He's the assistant director in data analytics at Bucknell University, where he's responsible for architecture, design, development of enterprise data and analytic solutions. Ken has a passion, or Ken is passionate about being a data hobbyist since he first discovered Tableau in 2016. And he's been an active member of the Tableau community as a forums ambassador and a 3-time Zen master. He spends a lot of time answering questions on the forums, again, Tableau ambassador there, engaging in data visualization discussions on social media, blogging, on his website, flerlagetwins.com, with his brother Kevin. And Ken, we'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Michael. Let me share my screen here. Am I sharing the right screen?
You are. Looks
All
good.
right, good. All right, so thanks so much for having me here today to both the tugs. Can we just call this the Arizona tug right now, maybe?
Sounds good.
Virtual tug meeting. So thank you for inviting me today. As Michael said, I'm going to be talking a little bit about Tableau's new data model, and we'll get into that in a moment. So Michael did a good job of introducing me, but just a quick, if you want to follow me on Twitter, there's my Twitter handle and the website there as well. And we'll talk about that just briefly here in a moment. So, and additionally, here's just a quick picture of some of my work on Tableau Public. So feel free to go out and check out my work on Tableau Public or on our website for more information on that. So some of you may know me, some of you may not. I've been around the Tableau community for about 4.5 years at this point. If you know me, you might know that I have a twin brother, Kevin. And Kevin's been doing some great things in Tableau. He started with Tableau about 2.5 years ago, so I had a little bit of a head start on him. And I don't think Kevin has presented for the Phoenix Tug yet, but or the Tucson Tug. But if he did, you would have probably heard him talk about how he's the handsome twin. Now, I don't know that I really buy this, but I'll give them this because I'm most definitely the smart one. And Kevin has been doing some really amazing things with Tableau in a short period of time. He just was named a Zen Master this year as well. Which is pretty amazing after just 2 years. But when you do eventually attend a presentation from Kevin, just know that he learned everything he knows about Tableau from me. I taught him everything, so everything great he does, I deserve a little bit of credit for it. All right, we agree to that?
That sounds good.
Kevin is doing some really great things. Shortly after he started using Tableau, I encouraged him to create a blog, even though, he wasn't quite an expert at that point, but he was doing some interesting things and some things I hadn't seen anyone else do. So I encouraged him to start a blog. And then after a year or so of him doing that, we were finding that, people were never quite sure which was which. I'd get questions about Kevin's blogs and vice versa. And we said, why are we doing this? Why do we maintain these two separate blogs? So last December, we kind of merged our blogs and created the FlerlageTwins.com. We moved all of our old content to that. All the old links still point to this, of course, as well. And we're publishing new content, usually about once a week. So definitely, just a quick plug for the website. Check out the website. Hopefully, there's some good, useful information for you on the site. And speaking of that, the presentation I'm about to do is really it's really just sort of a presentation version of a blog that I wrote when the new data model came out. So I would just encourage you, everything that we're talking about here is, number one, it's going to be recorded. Number two, it's all on the blog. So there's really, if you're planning on taking notes or anything like that, there's really no reason for that. Just get a screen capture of this and remember that the video is going to be published, and just sit back and kind of just learn and understand a little bit more about the data model as we go along. Sound good? All right, so let's jump into it. In order to understand how the new data model works, it's really important to understand how the old data model works so that we can kind of put them up against each other and compare their functionality a little bit. So I like to think of the old data model as being this sort of grumpy old man, right? He's sort of set in his ways. He doesn't like to change. He, just sort of inflexible for the most part, right? And that's kind of the way the old data model works. And we'll show some examples here in a minute. So this was everything, every version previous to 2020.2, which came out just a few months ago. Now, one thing I want to warn you about is that in order to understand how these data models, both the new and old data models, work, it's really important to understand how Tableau is communicating with your data source, with your database, right? And generally speaking, those communications are happening via a structured query language. language or SQL or SQL, right? So we are going to have to show a little bit of SQL in this presentation. If you're not really good with SQL, don't worry about it. It's just more for demonstration purposes. Most of the examples are simple, but it's really important to understand how that SQL is being passed back to the database so that you can get an understanding of how the data models work. All right, so everyone's familiar, I think, with the way the old data model worked, right? You would drag in your tables, so we're connected to Superstore here. You drag in your tables, say the orders and people's table, then you get this sort of little box that allows you to specify a join, right? So you have to pick the type of join, is an inner join, a left join, or an outer join, right? And then what kind of fields, what the join clause is that you're joining on, right? So this is the way the old data model made you set this up. And ultimately, and this is, I think, pretty familiar to all of us. We've got the Venn diagram that sort of illustrates the type of join and those kinds of things, right? Now, the thing about the old data model is, and there are some exceptions to this, and I'll mention this here in a moment, but generally speaking, once you build this data model, it's sort of set in stone, if you will. That's going to become the base structure, the base SQL that it's going to generate for any view, any workbook, any chart that you build within Tableau. And for this particular example, the SQL looks something like this, right? So we're selecting star from orders, interjoining on people based on that region table. Again, we've told Tableau exactly what we're trying to do here. We've specified the join type within the data model, and we specified those join fields in the data model as well. So this is going to become sort of the foundation that Tableau uses on any sort of view, any sort of chart that we build. And let's look at an example of that. So here's a very simple bar chart that we built using the old data model. So it's just showing customer sales by customer. And the thing I want to point out here is that both the customer name and the sales field, those only come from the orders table. We're not actually using anything from that people table in this view at all, right? Just two fields from the orders table. But when we look at the SQL, this is what we get here. We get select customer name, sum of sales from orders, interjoin people based on region, grouping by customer name. So this little piece here is sort of unnecessary, right? Remember, customer name and sales only come from the orders table. So why are we performing this interjoin to the people? We don't really need it, right? So this is sort of revealing the first sort of key problem that we have with the old data model, is that it's performing these unnecessary joins in a lot of cases. Now, I will note here that there are some ways to prevent these unnecessary joins with the old data model by using some of the referential integrity settings. But generally speaking, it's going to always do this join. It's going to use the data model that we structured for all the SQL that it's using. And this is kind of a problem because, this could create an inefficient SQL. It's going to be potentially a performance problem for our workbook if we have those unnecessary joins. So another problem we have is when we start dealing with duplicate records. So the people table that we've done so far is a pretty simple structure. It looks kind of like this, where we've got basically one person for each region, right? But what happens with the old data model if we have a table that looks more like this, where we actually have two people for each region? So instead of the 4 records, we now have 8, 2 for each region. The data model looks pretty much the same. We've done an inner join of orders to people multiple based on the region field. And the SQL looks pretty much the same as well, right? We have select star from orders, inner join people multiple on region. So that all looks great. You might be thinking, yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to build a chart, right? But then when you start to build something, you'll run into a problem like this. So with the original people table that had 4 records, 1 for each region, we had about 10,000 records in our data. But with this people multiple table, that doubles, right? So essentially, Tableau, because we've done that inner join to the people table, and the people table has duplicates for each region, we've essentially duplicated our data, right? And And so this sort of is our key problem number 2 with the old data model, is this potential data duplication. Now, for those of us who have been using Tableau for a while, who are pretty experienced with the tool, we generally know that we generally recognize this early on, and we know how to deal with it, right? So generally we're using, level of detail calculations or sometimes table calculations to eliminate the impact of those duplicate records. But for people that are new to this platform, new to Tableau, new to analyzing data, this is a really dangerous problem, right? Because if you would imagine me dragging sales or profit out onto this view, those numbers are going to be duplicated as well. So this can really lead to some inaccuracies, and it's a very dangerous problem. And it just feels like maybe it shouldn't be necessary to use more complex calculations like LODs and table calculations to deal with what is ultimately a pretty common problem, right? So to me, this is a pretty big issue, and one, hopefully will be addressed with the new data model, right? So let's just sort of recap these disadvantages, these problems with the old data model. One is, of course, those unnecessary joins, which can lead to performance problems, as we mentioned before. The duplicate records issue, we just discussed that, really be problematic, cause us to overstate our numbers, and is particularly concerning for new people in Tableau. And then, of course, the need to use these complicated things like LODs and table calculations to deal with what is ultimately a pretty common problem where you have these one-to-many relationships in your data. All right, so that brings us to the new data model. Hopefully the new data model will correct these problems, right? So the new data model was introduced in 2020.2. I don't recall exactly when that was released, but it was a few months ago. We've since had one more release, 2020.3, which has added some additional features to the data model. So this is relatively new. And I think a lot of us, many of our organizations probably aren't even on 2020.2 yet. We just upgraded ours this summer, but many are probably on a previous version. So people are still sort of getting used to this new data model. And I like to think about the new data model as kind of this new kid in town. He's a little bit more flexible, a little bit more willing to change, kind of go with the flow, right? As opposed to our older data model, which is sort of set in his ways and doesn't like to change, right? So the new data model looks a little bit differently. When we drag in our tables, so our orders and people tables, for example, we no longer have that Venn diagram anymore, and that's because we're not specifying the join type at all. We're going to let Tableau do that automatically for us, which is nice. So we don't really need to know whether it's an inner join or a left join or those kinds of things. We just need to know that we want to relate these tables based on a field or a set of fields. All right, so this little thing that connects the tables is being referred to as the noodle. It's just showing that there's a relationship of some sort between those tables. And then this dialog allows us to specify those relationships. So in this case, we've done a simple relationship based on the region, which is similar again to what we did with the old data model. Now, a couple of other terms that we need to be aware of with the new data model are the fact that this layer here, this top level layer, is called the logical layer. And each of these tables are logical tables. Now, if I were to double click on one of these these logical tables, it will take me to what's called a physical layer with physical tables, right? So this is a little bit confusing, but it's just important to remember that each logical table can be made up of, each logical table is made up of a physical layer, and that physical layer can have multiple tables and things like that. This physical layer is essentially just the old data model. It works and acts exactly like the old data model worked. You can do physical joins, and you'll have to specify the exact join type when you do that. And they just really added this additional logical layer. In fact, if you open up a workbook that was created prior to 2020.2, what you're going to get is one logical table that says, that's called migrated data. And then if you double click on that, you'll see that old physical model and all the joins that you designed in that data model. So it's just really important to understand that there are these different layers. You can get into the physical layer and model that way if you like. I think generally speaking, it's best to try to stay at the logical layer if you can and not dive into the physical layer, but there are times when you might want to do that. All right, so let's go back to the relationship that we set. So we dragged in our orders table and our people table, and we set a relationship on region. Again, this is pretty similar to what we did with the physical layer and the old data model. Now we can build a similar bar chart as we had before with customer name and sales. And before we start talking about this, I want to point out one key difference with the new data model. In the past, all of your dimensions would be grouped at the top and all of your measures would be at the bottom. With the new data model, the default is that they group them by logical table. So we'll have our orders table, and then all of our dimensions from the orders table, and then all of the measures from the orders table, and then the people table dimensions and people table measures. You can, of course, change it to group it by folder and organize it however you want. But this is a key difference in how it's laid out, and it's really important to understand that because it's a little scary at first when you're used to the old way of it being organized. So let's go back to this bar chart here. Now remember, we've built this bar chart with two fields, customer name and sales, which both come from just the orders table. There's no people table involved in here at all. And the SQL that we get from this is select customer name, sum of sales from orders grouped by customer name. Now, you may not notice right away what the difference is, so let's look at these sort of side by side. So we can see the SQL from the old data model and the SQL from the new data model, and we can see pretty clearly that the new data model has eliminated that join of the people. So what Tableau is doing, and what I like to call this this method is Tableau is generating what I'd call smart SQL, right? It's understanding the nature of the view, of the fields, the pills that are on our view, and it's generating a unique SQL statement to meet the requirements of that view only, right? So instead of sort of setting that base SQL up front, it's generating a new fresh SQL statement every time. And so in this case, it realized I don't need people, right? I know you set up a relationship to the people table, but I don't need people in this view. So I'm going to eliminate that join. And this is a concept called join culling. It's called that view, that join, because it doesn't need it. And this results in a SQL statement that is much more efficient and should be better performing than what it was before. Now let's go back to our view here, our bar chart, and we're going to make a change to this. We're going to add a filter on the people table, right? So we filtered down to Anna Andretti, this person, and let's take a look at what happens with our SQL when we do this. So we now see select customer name, sum of sales, some orders, inner join people on the region table where people equal, or person equal Anna Andretti. So the key difference between this and the prior SQL statement was it now has this inner join. So again, Tableau has recognized that we're now in a position where we need some data from the people table. So it has performed that join and allowed us to get that full set of data. So again, you can start to see how it sort of has this intelligence built into it. It's understanding what you need and trying to create the most efficient SQL statement that it can to provide you with the results that you need. Now let's go back to our people multiple situation. So this was the second sort of key problem with the old data model, was that when we have a table like this that has multiple records, we ended up duplicating the data. And we talked about the problems and the danger that can come with that. Now let's pretend that we created the relationship between orders and people multiple, and let's take a look at what the SQL statement would look like with this. So this is definitely a more complicated SQL statement than we've seen so far. And that may be, may give you a little bit of pause or a little bit of concern. And we're not going to dig into this in detail. The main thing I just want to point out is what Tableau is doing here is it's created this subquery that does the filtering on the person and basically just returns the appropriate regions. And then it's joining that back to our sort of main query against the orders table. And the reason it's doing this is it's realized that this table is going to, if we do just a straight inner join, this table is going to create multiple records, and it doesn't want to do that anymore, right? So it's designed a SQL statement with this subselect and inner join to try to avoid that situation. And in the end, it actually eliminates these duplicate records while retrieving the results exactly like we wanted. So if we look at the number of records again, with the people join or the people relationship, we had about 10,000. And with people multiple, we had about 10,000 as well. So to me, this is huge. This is a real game changer because, it really eliminates, I'm not sure that it's always going to eliminate the duplicates, but in many cases, if not most cases, it should be doing that. So this is really going to help people that are new to Tableau, who are still learning the platform and may not recognize the difference in their data, and those multiple records in their data. And it will help to prevent, the overstating of their metrics. And I think that's a really important thing. In addition, it really limits our need to do things like LODs and table calculations, which are a little bit more advanced. To be, it eliminates our need to have to use those advanced functionalities to deal with what is ultimately a pretty common problem, right? These one-to-many relationships in our data. So I think that is a really huge thing in the new data model. While we're here, I want to point out one thing here is that we no longer have a number of records field. Instead, it's replaced by a count field for each table. If we were to pull orders count out onto this table, in fact, we actually did that for one of these, we're going to get the number of records in the orders table. If we were to pull out the people table, we get the number of records in the people table. So in that case, in people multiple, it would be 8. So it works a little bit differently than number of records did in the past. But the one thing I want to point out is that if you want something that works like number of records, you can just create a calculated field with a value of 1 in it. In fact, that's always what number of records was. It was always just a calculated field with 1 in it. And then you can use that in a similar fashion the way you have with number of records. Just remember that the SQL being generated is different for every view. So that number of records value may be different on one view than another view based on the other pills that are being used. So let's go back to our old data model disadvantages. So we had the issue with unnecessary joins. We had potential duplicate records and the need for some advanced functionality to eliminate those duplicates. So hopefully what you've seen here, is that Tableau in its more intelligent way that it's generating the SQL, it's eliminating unnecessary joins, right? It's culling the join when it's not needed, and only giving you the tables that you need within your SQL statement. It could cause duplicate records. That's no longer really much of an issue either, right? Again, the smart intelligence that it's built into the new data model is doing its best to try to eliminate those possibilities of duplication of your data. And because of that, we no longer have that need to use LODs and table calcs to eliminate the impact of those duplicate records. So ultimately, the new data model has a couple of really key, huge advantages. One is it's easier to use. I mean, I keep going back to that new user who's just starting to work with Tableau. That new user doesn't have to understand what a join is, quite honestly, right? And they certainly don't have to understand the types of joins and those kinds of things. So this is really lowers the bar for people being able to grab Tableau, connect to their data, and be able to do some great analysis without having a database background. Certainly better accuracy. I think this is largely around the elimination of those duplicate records. And of course, you know, the duplicate record thing and the LODs is also another ease of use thing, because we don't have to use those more advanced calculations. Better accuracy, lower risk of us duplicating those records because of the duplication. And then, you know, the third one I think is really important is I think that the new data model is really going to help to increase the number of use cases for a single data source. I think, you know, probably what a lot of us do, or a lot of us have on, say, our Tableau server, are you know, maybe 3 or 4 data models or data sources that use the same tables, but are joined in slightly different ways, or something along those lines. And that's because of that, you know, sort of inflexibility of the way the old data model works. I think with the new data model, we might find ourselves being able to start to consolidate some of those. You know, maybe those 3 or 4 come down to one single data model that is able to leverage the flexibility of the new data model. And ultimately, you know, that's going to lead to better accuracy as well, right? Because instead of us having to maintain 3 or 4 different data sources, and you know, maybe we forget to do one, and that leads to you know, a reporting error of some sort. We only have to maintain that one data model, and hopefully that leads to less maintenance and better accuracy in our data. Now, when I first wrote this blog and built this presentation, that was right after the release of 2020.2, and there were a couple of pretty big limitations to it. Particularly, you couldn't do inequality relationships. So you couldn't say not equal to or greater than equal to within your relationships like you can in the join. And the other thing where there were no relationship calculations like you could do in a join calculation. But with 2020.3, both of those items have been addressed. You can do those greater than, less than, not equal to within your relationships if you want. And you can do relationship calculation. So a really good example for a relationship calculation is if one table has an integer year field and another table has just a regular date, you can relate the year to a calculation that takes the year of that date, and you can relate your data that way. So the remaining kind of key limitation is that the new data model currently doesn't support certain types of data warehousing methodologies. And these, I'm not going to get into a lot of detail, but this is largely situations where you have multiple fact tables that are coming together in different ways. If you're concerned that might impact you in your organization, then go check out the blog. I link to Tableau's documentation on this, and you can explore this a little bit further. And you know, I think to me, what I'm really excited about is you know, I'm really thrilled about this already, but they've really only just begun. I mean, we're on the second release of this new data model. From what I've seen in the community, what I've seen in my organization is this has been a pretty seamless transition from the old method to the new method, and I've seen very few people that have struggled or have had any sort of real problems with this. We're only on the second version of it, so I expect to continue to see Tableau building this out and making this better and better, adding new features, improving it, and ultimately, I just really feel like this is a game changer because it allows us to spend a little less time fiddling with the data and fighting with the data, and more time digging in, visualizing it, analyzing it, and making sense of that data. So with that, that's all I really have for you. I'll give you one last chance to the URL of that blog, and you can find all my contact information here as well. So you can feel free to reach out to me if you ever have any questions about this or anything else. Before I wrap, I just want to plug Joshua, who's coming up after me. Joshua has just released the 4th edition, I believe, of his book. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there's a whole chapter, or at least a pretty significant portion, that is focused on the new data, that focuses on the new data model. So if you really want to dig into this in a little bit more detail, be sure to pick up Joshua's book. at some point. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Ken. We've got a ton of questions out there. We've got about 5 minutes before we need a break, so maybe we could try to get through some of them, and if you can answer some of those questions offline, that'd be great.
Sure.
One of the questions comes from Jose. He's asking, when you were showing the SQL queries that the data model's generating, are those statements happening against in-memory data or against the real database?
It depends on the way you've connected to your database. So if you're using a live connection to a database, and all this gets really weird when you start dealing with non-database, like file-based data sources. But if we're talking about a real database that understands and communicates using SQL, it's a live connection. It's basically generating those SQL statements and passing them back to the database, data back, and pulling them into Tableau in a sort of real-time fashion. If you're using an extract, then that data is sort of locally stored. It's either locally stored on your computer or on a Tableau server or Tableau online. A similar way, I mean, those extract databases are a SQL compliant type of database, and Tableau is communicating those using SQL just like another database. The advantage, of course, is those extracts is they're really sort of optimized for quick queries against Tableau, and those extracts reside locally to the workbook. So basically, it's pretty much doing the same thing with either of them, with either of those two options.
Great, thank you. There's a number of questions relating to relationships and blends. One of the questions, does this really eliminate blending? Does it replace it? Are blending still needed?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think so. I will admit that I usually try to avoid blends, generally speaking, because I generally find that I eventually hit a wall with what I can do with a blend, right? So I will often, force it into a join like that to avoid some of those limitations. I think, what we've seen over the past couple of years really is that the new features that are coming out from Tableau are, over time, shrinking the number of use cases for blends. I think the new data model does start to shrink that down even more. But there certainly are cases where I think blends still make sense, where you have data at different levels of detail that you want to bring together and aggregate and give you just sort of total aggregate numbers. I think there are still some use cases where blends make sense. So I don't think this eliminates it, but I think it's just another thing that reduces the number of viable use cases for blends.
All right, and we've got several more questions, so maybe you could jump in and take a look at the Q&A.
Yep.
One question, maybe you can answer quickly. When would it be better to use the physical or the newer, the older model?
That is a good question, my suggestion would be to try to leverage the relationships. There should be not a lot of use cases where it really makes sense for you to drill into that physical layer. The things that I'm thinking about that where it might make sense are more complex things where you're doing where you're trying to do data padding or data densification, and you need to force it to do something very specific, and you don't want Tableau generating that SQL for you. But for the most part, for the most business use cases, I think try to stick to the logical modeling, and if you do run into a situation where it's not doing something the way you expect, then you always have that sort of opportunity to drill into the physical layer and build a physical model instead.
That's great. And I know there's some questions about the kind of the new model and in the way that maybe you have to revamp reports. So just an FYI, if you've already created a report using the older model, the physical model, it is not going to self-upgrade. You're not going to all of a sudden turn into the logical layer. So when you do open up into a newer version of Tableau, you're going to get the little box. I think Ken had a screenshot of it. You'll just need to double click into it, and then you're back at that logical layer. So your dashboards are not going to automatically update. When you design new, that'll be the default setting for your relationships. So
yep, they made it really easy to transition those. I mean, it really doesn't change anything. It keeps those keeps working at the physical layer just like it always has.
Great. All right, so we're going to take a 5-minute break. Be back at the top of the hour, and then we'll get started. If you did have any more questions, again, please post them in the Q&A, and Ken and the rest of the team will take a look and help answer those.
Thanks.
All right, welcome back. We're going to get started. In this segment, we like to do this thing called Tableau Trivia. Do you know how to Tableau? So we're going to use a platform called menti.com. If you want to participate, please go ahead and sign into that website. I posted the information also into the chat. All right. So again, if you go to menti.com, code is 1398855, or you click the link in the chat. If you've got a smartphone and you'd rather play on your phone, you can point your camera at the barcode and it should take you directly to the app. All right. All right, starting to get some people in on here. So we'll stick on this screen for a while, give, again, everybody a minute or so to log in and participate. See a lot of people in Arizona, Germany, Colorado, nice. A lot of people in Colorado. Hopefully you're coming back from the Denver and Boulder user groups that we teamed up with. Awesome. Wyoming, fantastic. All right, we'll give it another 10 seconds or so, and then we'll move on. And if you're just joining us, we are doing a little bit of Tableau Trivia. We're answering some poll questions right now, but if you want to participate, there's the link in the chat, or you can go to menti.com, and when it asks you for the code, type in 1398855. All right, overwhelmingly positive in Arizona, but happy to see all throughout the US and overseas as well. Good stuff. All right. Is this your first time at a Tableau user group? Whether it be in person, virtual, at all. So it looks like we got a few people that this is your first time attending. So welcome. Again, we hope you learned something new today. We're always interested in hearing what you're looking to get out of Tableau, so please engage with us. We develop our content and our experiences based on your feedback, so good. Hopefully we can get some more regular attendees. Again, the Phoenix Tableau User Group and likewise Tucson, we are on a monthly cadence, so we hope to see you next month. It looks like for the next 2 months, Phoenix and Tucson are back to back, so take a couple days off and plan accordingly. All right. Which Tableau products interest you? And you can select multiple. So we've got Tableau Public, Desktop, Prep, we're going to hear a lot about today. Server, online, mobile, data dev stuff, APIs, Salesforce is, Tableau is part of the Salesforce family. So is that your thing? You want to see more things around that? Desktop, good stuff. Got a lot of server, good. All right. Love it. Okay, next question. Which Tableau version currently using? Now, this new data model stuff is only available in the latest iterations of 2020. So if you're on anything 2019 or below, you got to upgrade. All right. Looks like for the most part, everyone's on a most recent release, so that's good to see. All right. How long have you been using Tableau? Got a number of people that have been using it a while. It's good to see. All right, for those of you that just started, congratulations. Those of you that are less than a year, hopefully your journey is going well. There's a lot of great free resources out on the Tableau website for free training. Tableau Public is also a great version that you can download for free. Ken showed a little bit of his Tableau Public profile. Great way to get inspiration, learn about the product. There's a lot of community activities that we'll cover in the resources at the end of the presentation, so hopefully you can engage in a lot of those. What type of virtual meeting topics interest you? We've got demos, customer stories, hands-on stuff with like things makeover Monday, workout Wednesday, workshops, looking at maybe doing a certification workshop here soon. Tips, tricks, data dev stuff again. Tips, tricks, good. Workshops, love it. All right. Next question. Thank you. Any of you have any Tableau certifications or are interested in that? Tableau certification is not just a great way to showcase your skill set, but it's also a great way to learn the product. So for those of you that are just starting out, tableau.com/certification, there's study guides out there, gives you really a roadmap to follow on how you should approach your learning and training to really get up to speed with the product. So really happy to see a lot of people here are certified. We love acknowledging your successes. So if you just been recently certified, shoot us a note and we love to pay attention to that in next meetings and give you congratulations. And what modeling camp do you identify with most? So we talked about relationships today. Are you actually using those? Is joins, the logical stuff, legacy, your thing, data blends? Is that your go-to? Custom SQL? A lot of custom SQL. Interesting. All right, good stuff. And what dashboarding layout tribe do you belong to or subscribe to mostly? I know this might depend, but always interested to see where people lie. Team Tile, good. Yeah, for those who are like, what? When you develop your dashboards, you have your layout containers, and you can lay those out in a tiled or floating fashion. So that's kind of what we're referring to here. All right, go Team Tile. All right, let's do some Tableau trivia. Hopefully this will go quickly. A lot of the stuff that we talked about is going to be on stuff we're going to be presenting today with Tableau Prep and relationships. So we'll start off with some Tableau Prep questions. All right, got our players. Let's do this. Remember, you're playing to learn, but you're winning for prizes. The faster you answer, the more points you get. Now, Tableau Prep is available under which licensing tier? Got Tableau Creator, Explorer, and Viewer. Where is Tableau Prep licensed? All right, it is licensed under the Tableau Creator tier. Congratulations to 33 of you. Next question. When you're automatically identifying the cleaning operations in Prep, you can use what to fix your problems in the data? Insights, recommendations, data wizard, suggestions. What's going to allow you to automatically identify and clean those operations? Yes, recommendations. I don't know what data wizard or all that is, but it sounds good. All right, next question. Schedule, monitor, and administer your data flows with this product for server. How can you automate that stuff? What do you need? Tableau Flow Orchestrator, Tableau Flow Scheduler, Tableau Prep Scheduler, or Tableau Prep Conductor? Absolutely. Tableau Prep Conductor is a component with the server management add-on that you can get with Tableau Server. All right, next question. Level of detail and rank calculations are supported in Prep. Is that true or false? It's absolutely true. All right. Now we're going to go on to some data modeling questions. Remember, the faster you answer, the more points you get. So how do relationships join by default? Is it a left outer join, an inner join? Is it a data blend? Or are there no upfront join types? Hopefully you're paying attention to Ken's presentation. There are no upfront join types with relationships. It's all based on what's on the view and how the queries are generated. All right, next question. It's possible to use joins and relationships at the same time. So your logical and physical tier. Is that true or false? Absolutely true. I think, if I recall, we saw a demo of that. Next question. Relationships can be many-to-many and support full outer joins. Is that true or false? There we go. It is true. Taken right out of the guidebook information. All right. Tableau Prep Builder supports creating relationships. Is that true or false? Does Tableau Prep Builder support this new data model? Oh, this is false. Tableau Prep does joins, aggregates, cleanses data, so it does not create the new data model. That's Tableau Desktop. All right, last question. LOD's expressions and calculations work the same in the new data model. Yes, they work the same. No, there are some requirements, or they're no longer needed in the new data model. All right, yes, in fact, they do work the same. All right. And congratulations, Joshua. While you are our winner, you are ineligible for a prize, unfortunately. Ken, congratulations for second place. You are also ineligible for a prize. Heidi, amazing, good job. We may have a little bit of a challenge getting you a prize, but let's figure that out. Contact me, ping me offline, and we'll see what we can do. So thank you all for playing. Hope you learned something. Hope it was enjoyable. Christian, I'll turn it over to you, and then we'll get started with the next segment.
All right, cool. Well done, Ken and Joshua. So yeah, excited to have Joshua joining us from Oklahoma. Not every TUG event you get to have the opportunity to have two Zen Masters present. So this is an awesome opportunity to hear from Joshua. He's a Tableau Zen Master 5 times, I believe. Zen Master Hall of Fame this year, if I'm not mistaken. Was an Ironviz Global Finalist, and he's a principal at Technion Data Solutions. So he's here to talk to us today about taming data dragons. So we all have messy, difficult, sometimes even disastrous data, and he's here to help us all with those situations using Tableau Prep. So just excited to have him here. And Joshua, by all means, if I miss anything in your introduction, please fill in the blanks, but turn it over to you.
All right, thanks. No, that maybe covers it. Yeah, so I'm excited today to talk about how to train your data dragon, because we do have those. Even people that I work with that have the best and greatest well-designed data warehouse, often they have other sources of data that they want to bring into that, and it's messy, and most people know what that's like. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to take a look at Tableau Prep basically from a ground level up. And if you've never used it, this will be a great introduction. If you've used it, maybe you'll pick up a few tips or tricks. We'll see along the way. So I already had an introduction. We don't need to cover anything else here. I'll point out my blog there and Twitter contact. So Ken, thank you for the book plug. That was very generous. I'm excited that it's out. And there is what else I'm excited about in life, the 4 children that keep me busy and also are just a great joy. Now, my wife saw a version of this slide and she said, "Why am I not pictured here?" And I said, "Well, I can add you." And she said, "No." So I do have a wife, but she's not here. What are we going to do today? So we're going to take a look at taming dragons, and we're going to do this kind of quickly. And so we're going to look at our primary tools in Tableau Prep. We've got 4 of them, and we'll talk about what those are, and then we've got some other minor tools that we can use as well. But it helps me to think of it in terms of 4 major ways that we can structure and clean data, and then some other things as well. And then we'll look at an example. We'll just we'll work through an example and see how those tools are used. This is an example Tableau Prep flow. This showcases all the different kinds of steps in Tableau Prep. So input and output, you're going to have data that's going to come in. You're going to output your flow somewhere else. And there are lots of options there. We'll cover some of those. But the exciting stuff is everything that happens in between, because in between the input and the output, that's your data flow. That's everything that you're doing to clean the data, maybe with a clean step. And then these are your 4 major tools: aggregations, joins, pivots, and unions. So you'll see how those work. And real quick, just an overview of those 4 major tools. So a union, if you have multiple tables of data and you want to bring those together, you have some options on how you might bring them together. But a union basically just takes them and stacks them all into one single data set. So here we've taken 3 tables, stacked them together, and you can see that columns with the same name and type, they end up being the same column. We'll see what happens when there's a mismatch and how we can deal with that. We'll also see the benefit that Tableau Prep gives us with some metadata around unions. So you can see their table name or occasionally file name. That will give us some additional data that we can work with and understand where the data came from. So that's union. In Tableau Prep, we'll see it. It looks, there's a couple of different ways that you can do a union. One is on the input step. So if you're using a file data source or a few other kinds of data sources, you can actually union it together there in the input. Here's a wildcard union, and you can see we're just taking all the text files in a directory and telling Tableau Prep to union those together. We'll see an example of that in real life here in just a bit. Another possibility is to take all of or various parts of your flow. Here are 3 inputs, and you can union them together in the flow. And we'll also see that in practice as well. Tool number 2 to tame our data dragons is join. So another way of bringing data together, but different from a union, because we're not stacking data here. Here we're actually trying to match up row to row between 2 or more tables. In fact, just 2 at a time. So if we have orders and we have returns, notice that order ID is a common field between those 2, and I can look at matching that up. And then depending on the kind of join, I can decide whether to keep rows from the left or the right, or do an inner join where I keep only the matches. So here the result is keeping all of the orders and then getting return reasons where it's applicable. That would be a left join. Or if I did just an inner join, I would only keep the rows that matched, so only orders with returns. And that actually, when Ken was talking about reasons why you might want to think of using joins instead of a relationship, if you knew for sure that you only wanted to analyze orders that had joins, you might consider, or orders that had returns, you might consider using a join rather than a relationship, so that you can control that specific data set for analysis. But I do like the relational model that Tableau has. In Tableau Prep, a join looks like this. So you'll take a piece of your flow, join it together, and you'll get a nice join pane that will give you lots of information and control about the join. So we'll take a look at that in detail. Tool number 3, pivot. So pivot is powerful. Tableau Prep actually allows us to pivot 2 different ways. One is to take columns and transform it to rows, and then the other is the reverse of that, taking rows to columns. I find myself occasionally using both, but most of the time going from columns to rows, because a lot of data sets, especially Excel data sets and things that are nicely human readable, are not so Tableau friendly. So here, for example, I've got a table and I've got the number of donkeys, sheep, and goats eaten by various dragons. Really, that's one measure, how many animals were eaten, and there's a type of animal. So what I might want to do is pivot that so that I take this wide data set and turn it into a tall, narrow data set and end up with a row per measure with a description of what that measure is. So here I get 2 columns, animal and number eaten, and it has reshaped the data. That's going to be a lot easier to analyze in Tableau and visualize. So I'm going to do this quite a bit with a lot of different data sets. In Tableau Prep, it's going to look something like this, adding a pivot and then taking the fields that I want to pivot, dropping it into the pane there, and then possibly renaming the field as necessary. And so we'll even take a look at that. And as I show some of these examples, the one thing I love about Tableau Prep, same as Tableau Desktop, there's often more than one way of doing things. So just because I show it one way in the interface, there's probably 10 different ways you could get there. And so you'll find the flow that works best for you. Tool number 4, aggregation. So Tableau Prep allows us to roll data up to higher levels of aggregation. So let's take an example like this, our previously pivoted table, and there are multiple ways that we could aggregate this data. So for one thing, we could aggregate it by dragon. We could take the sum of animals eaten per dragon, and we'd end up with a data set like that. Or we could aggregate it by animal. So there's the animal and the number eaten, or we could just get a total for the entire data set. And aggregation can be very useful as we think about how we want different data sets to interact. It could be useful for performance if my data set's very large and I want to trim it down or cut down the number of rows. And especially with the new data model, I could potentially have an aggregate data set that I could use that noodle relationship inside Tableau Desktop and give myself a lot of flexibility with analysis. So aggregation can be very useful in Tableau Prep, and we'll see all of these in play. In Tableau Prep, aggregation looks like this: adding an aggregate step, selecting which fields define the group, which fields get aggregated, and then lots of options in terms of how we aggregate it. Is it a sum? Is it a min or a max or a count? We'll have lots of options there. So those are the 4 major tools. We've got union, join, pivot, aggregation. And the power of Tableau Prep is that we can put all of those together. So we can do all of these with a data set, and we can do them in any order that we want. We can bring in new data and join it. We can pivot the results. We can aggregate those results. We can union that with another data set, all kinds of flexibility and power. And then all kinds of minor tools that we can use within that data. So calculations and filtering and grouping and lots of cleaning operations. We'll see some of these today. There's no way we'll see all of them, but we'll see how that works. And you can see kind of as you build out your flow, you're going to start to see these things come together. So you can join and then pivot and then add another clean step, maybe do some filtering there. and then join that in. And so it's a very organic experience. You're solving each issue, each problem with the data, structuring the data as you go, and just like Tableau Desktop gives you immediate visual feedback, Tableau Prep does too. And that's what makes it such an amazing tool, because you're thinking on the fly and you're fixing as you go. And let's see how it works. Let's actually pull this up and tame some data dragons. Here's Tableau Prep. Here's the start screen. I've got a little pane here on the left for data connections. We'll look at that. I've got my recent data flows here, so I could quickly open up something, a discovery pane. So it's similar in a lot of ways to the start screen of Tableau Desktop, but the way you start, just like in Tableau Desktop, is connecting to data. Let me pull up some sample data, and we'll take a look at what we're going to work with today. So what I've got today is some airline flights employees are taking. This is through 2019, we're going to see, so my data might be a little bit more sparse this year. But I've got a primary data set here, data for employees taking flights, and I'm just going to open that in Excel so that we can just take a look at what it looks like initially. Sometimes I'll open things in Excel or whatever the data source is just to see it before I take it to Tableau Prep. Sometimes I'll take it straight to Tableau Prep and start working with it there. But this one's kind of important to notice that, like a lot of Excel documents, I've got some things that might cause problems, some merged cells, some summary tables at the top, and then my data doesn't actually start until row 10. And then it's pretty straightforward data, a row ID, passenger email, a name, when they purchased a ticket, when they actually traveled, an ID for them, which airline, how much they paid, and which airports they flew from and to. So it looks fairly straightforward, but let's take a look at what happens in Prep. I could go to add a new connection here. I could click on Connect Data here. I'm going to start just by dragging and dropping the file. So just like Tableau Desktop, I can drag and drop a file, and it creates that connection automatically. You'll notice a couple of things. It brings in each sheet is treated as a table. There's also a named range there. That's that summary table. I want the main data set. But as I pull it in, I notice that I'm not getting exactly what I expect. I'm getting a lot of field names named F2, 3, 4, 5. That's not helpful. If I look at the sample values, most everything's null. Well, that's because the data didn't start until row 10 and had some junk at the top. So I'm going to turn on the data interpreter. And the data interpreter can help me a lot with Excel files that are not, that don't have the data starting at the top row and don't have headers correctly. And notice once I turned it on, not only did it fix all of the issues that I was seeing there, but it also gave me a little bit more detail. It identified some subtables. It found that one, and it might have even found others if the Excel document allowed for it. But this is a great place to start. And so most of the time when I'm working with a data set in Tableau Prep Builder, I'll just add a clean step, because that's going to give me this really nice profile pane where I start to see a profile of the data. And I'm going to make all kinds of interesting discoveries here. You know, ticket price kind of stands out to me. It's a nice histogram look, kind of what I would expect maybe. Some tickets are cheap, some are expensive, but most are there in the middle. So I'm going to start to see problems with the data if it's there. You know, row ID, if I'm looking for a unique identifier, this doesn't look unique, but Tableau Prep is giving me a summary view. It's if I go to the detail view, so I right-click the field, lots of options, but one option is to switch it to a detail view. Now I can see that row ID, I've only got one row per row ID. I can kind of look down here on the side and everything's 1 row per row ID. So that's a great unique identifier. And I'm going to look through some of the other fields. One thing I'll notice, in fact, one of the questions on the Tableau Trivia quiz was, what does Tableau Prep give you to automatically fix data? Recommendations. And so here's a recommendation. It says, this looks like an email field. And in fact, it is. But some of the values are not valid. So I can change the data role here to email and apply that. And now it's going to call out the values that are not valid. And I'll get a little exclamation point next to everything that it says is not a valid email. If I click recommendations again, I'll see some additional recommendations. Now it says, hey, all these invalid values, you have a couple of options. You could filter them out, or you could group them together as null. And I don't want to filter these out. These are still valid passengers. They just didn't type in their email right or something. But it's pretty useless information, at least probably. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that too, and take those all to a null value. And you can see it gives me a little icon there to group them together. As I look through, I see a few other problems potentially. Airline looks good. I've got United, Delta, but American looks like it's got some variation there. And how am I going to solve for that? Well, I've got some options, but one thing I love in Tableau Prep is the idea that I can group values together. I could do it manually. I could look for common characters or spelling. Here I'm going to try pronunciation. And if I click on that, notice it took 3 of those American Airlines and says, hey, those are pretty similar in the way that you pronounce them. I could adjust the sensitivity, but it got those. It did not get AA, which I know is American Airlines as well, but I can add that to the group. And so it's a fairly seamless and just organic process of fixing the data, and I'm doing it right here on the fly and seeing it as I go. And I'm making some other interesting discoveries. I can start to see the proportion of ticket price records that are made up by American Airlines or Delta or United, and maybe I see that shape change per airline, and it starts to give me even ideas about the types of analysis I want to do when I take this to Tableau. But it also reminds me that I'm missing some data, because I've got 3 airlines, but I know that that I also have some Southwest data. The problem with Southwest data is that it's in another system, and that system just dumps out a periodic file into a directory somewhere. So I get this file maybe once a year in this case, but oftentimes I'll see files once a month, once a week, maybe even once a day. And I want to capture all of these files. I want them to come into Tableau Prep, and I don't want to have to go in and edit Tableau Prep every time a new file comes in, especially if it's quite often. So let's see what I can do. I can start with one of these. I'll start with Southwest 2016. And remember that one of our 4 major tools for dealing with the data structure is this idea of union. And I can union together files in a directory. So I can change it from a single table here in a single file to a wildcard union. I can include subfolders if I wanted to look at all the subfolders. I can tell it to include or exclude files. I can give it a matching pattern. So I could say anything that starts with Southwest I want to capture. Here it's fine. Everything in this directory that's a CSV is Southwest data. So I'll apply that. And now if I look at the data, what I'll find is that Tableau Prep has brought together all of my files, and it's even given me a really nice field here, file paths, so that I can identify those files. And I can start to see which records even came from those files and which ones did not. So a really nice and useful field, at least at times. I look through this data and I see, okay, I've got some of the same issues, passenger email, recommendations. I'll accept those and do the same sort of thing. I'll apply the idea that all of them go to null if not needed. Here, everything else is looking pretty good. And so, since I've got the data and it's all in relatively the same structure as my primary data source, now I'm going to bring these together. And notice that if I drag this part of the flow up to this part, I'm going to get some options. I could join them. In this case, I want a union. So union is that idea of stacking the data on top of each other, or concatenating the rows on top of each other. And for the most part, things match up pretty well. If I scroll through here, I can see fields that matched up well. Passenger email is shared between the blue and the orange inputs of the union. So is purchase date, travel date, ticket price. But I do have some fields back here at the left that Tableau Prep is saying, yeah, you better look at these and figure out what you want to do with them. So things like row ID. If I select row ID here, it highlights another possible row ID. It's just a slightly different name. Tableau Prep says that's probably the same field. What do you want to do? I want to merge them together. So I've got an option here to do that. I can just click the plus and it merges them together nicely. And another field, fare type. It highlights ticket type. Let's take a look at ticket type and see. So fare is either business, economy, first class, or all the nulls are from the other side of the union. Ticket type. Have I missed it? If I can't, there it is. So first class, business, and economy. So those are in fact very similar fields, or referring to the same set of data, just different names. So another option in the interface is to select both with a control click and then right click and say merge. So I can merge those together and it disappears from the mismatched list. Airline is an interesting one. Notice that that it only comes from the blue side. In fact, Tableau Prep highlights it all the way back to the source here. It sort of mutes out the orange because it says airline was only a field from my primary data set. If I select the null, notice that that is from the Southwest files. So the good thing is I know what the airline is. It's Southwest. So with that null selected, I'll just start typing and I can just tell it that those nulls are Southwest, and I've taken care of that field. Travel insurance only comes from Southwest. That's a true, false. I may decide I don't even need that field, so I can remove it. So I'll right click it and remove. Same thing with passenger ID. I might end up removing that one. And then the file paths, that sometimes is very useful. In this case, I know everything is coming from Southwest, and I already have the purchase and travel dates in those files, so the year is not helpful. I don't really need this data at this point. I'm going to remove that field as well. And then I will, I've finished up the union and everything related to that. Airline's taken care of. It's the only remaining mismatched field. Now I'm going to go on to a new clean step and kind of see where I am and what I've got. Notice that the union results in another table names. So originally I had file path when it was a wildcard union. Now I have table names, and it tells me where that data came from, which is really nice at times. In this case, I don't necessarily need it. I'll remove it. I do have my airline now. I've got my passenger email, purchase date, travel date, ticket price, row ID. This is interesting. It was a unique identifier in both data sources, but now that I've brought it together, it's no longer unique. So that's really not useful either. I'll remove that. And then I see fare type, and I brought this together from both data sources. If I highlight it, Tableau Prep shows me it comes from both. And you'll remember I had to merge together the fields, and so that took care of the field name. But some of the values look like they're different text for the same thing. First class spelled out, and first class with a numeric indication there. So I can fix that. I just control click both, and I'll right click and say group values. and it groups both first classes into one. I could give it a new description here if I wanted to. I don't. I'll keep it at first class, and that works out really well. And again, some interesting insights in the data as I go. Business class ticket prices, economy ticket prices, first class ticket prices. Kind of interesting to see that distribution. So that highlighting, that brushing, it allows me to see the relationships in the data and even start to make some analytical insights that I may further take into Tableau. And then as I think about what I want to do in Tableau, there's a lot of analysis that I could do here. But one thing that I would love to do is to take this route and visualize it. So this identifies airports, an origin airport, a destination airport, but it's all together in one field. So what can I do with that? Well, one thing that I could do is I could start to think about the structure that works in Tableau Desktop, and what I can do. If I were to have a single field that was an airport code, Tableau Desktop actually recognizes that as a geographic location and knows how to plot that on a map. So that's one possibility. If I had it split out on a single row and I had the latitude and longitude for each, then I could use some geospatial functions like make line between those two latitudes and longitudes and actually draw a line between the airport. That's actually relatively new in Tableau. The old way of doing that required me to have a row for the origin and a row for the destination. And in fact, that's what I'm going to look at doing now. So to get there, I'm going to split this data. So I want to take my route and split it into origin and destination. I like right-clicking, but you may also notice the ellipses button here. This is the same tool set. So if I click that, I get my options for filtering and cleaning. I'll look at all those nice options for removing numbers and punctuation and trimming spaces. What I'm looking for is this split. I could do an automatic and see if it works. I like having the ability to do a custom and just having a little bit more control because I know it's a hyphen that splits it, and I know that I want the first two. In fact, there's the only two fields that come from that. So I'll split with that custom split, and it places it back here at the beginning. I get route split 1, route split 2. This is my origin, so I'm actually going to rename the field origin, and I'll rename this one destination. So I just double click the name of the field, and I can rename it right there on the fly. I can change data types on the fly, so just click here, tell it, no, this field's really a date, no, this field's really a number. In this case, it's fine, it's actually a string. That's just fine. And now I'm at a point where I think, what else do I want for my analysis? I know that ultimately I'm going to reshape the data, but as I look through here, I notice there are certain individuals who seem to fly more than others. So a few of these people maybe fly a few times, but there may be individuals in here who fly quite a bit. I actually want to identify these. A couple of ways I could do that. One would be to do an aggregation. And so since I know that each record in this part of the flow is a single trip, I could just say, let's look per person. And let's add up the number of rows. So you can see here all of my fields. It's telling me that it thinks that these are good grouping fields, and it thinks that these are good fields to sum. But I've got all kinds of options for how I do it. I could drag and drop that into the groups or this into the aggregate. I do want to aggregate it. And now look at that really nice kind of histogram there. That's kind of what I would expect. Some people don't fly very much. Most people fly a little bit. Some people fly a lot. So that helps me even have more confidence in the data that it's looking right. So that's one way of potentially getting to that answer. But another way is to think of something like this. So I'm going to create a new clean step. Notice I can branch off different branches of the flow. And one of the questions on the quiz was, can I use level of detail calculations in Tableau Prep? And I certainly can. So I could do the same sort of thing with an aggregation and create the aggregation this way. So number of trips per person, and just write it as a fixed level of detail. So fixed per person, and just do a sum of 1. And that'll tell me how many times they flew. Same sort of histogram view there. But now, since I've kept that, since that's a fixed level of detail, and I just kept that on each row, so I know Anna Chung. So here down in the data grid, I can see she flew 10 times. I can see people who flew 9 times, 16 times. That's a lot. But now we could even take that and do another calculation. So select that field, calculate, and just say frequent, or maybe traveler type. And so based on that number of trips, I can start to define what I think is frequent, or maybe often, or otherwise it's pretty rare that they travel. So I create that kind of calculation, and now I've identified each person based on how often they travel. So now I can get data sets that represent my frequent travelers, or the travelers who travel often or rarely travel. So I've got all kinds of abilities here with either aggregation steps or level of detail calculations to do that kind of analysis or that kind of data structuring. Now back to the idea of our route. So we've got the origin and destination, but it's in a single row, and I know that in Tableau I want those to be in different rows, and I want my latitude and longitude. Well, one thing that I've got is notice all the different types of connections. It's close to the complete list in Tableau Desktop. There are a few that are missing, but I have in Microsoft SQL Server a data set that will allow me to find the latitude and longitude for an airport code. So I connect to my database. I see all the tables here. I would even see stored procedures or views that they would show up as well. But this is the one I want. I want airports, and I bring that one in. Notice that one has an airport code and a latitude and longitude, and even has a name with it. If I were to look at the clean step, this is what I end up with. It's 1 record per airport code. So if I think about how I want to bring that information into my flow up here, I realize that my flow up here, I have origin and destination, and they're in a single row. So a couple of options. One is I could join 2 times, once on origin, once on destination, and get 2 sets of latitude and longitude. That would actually be a great structure for leveraging Tableau Desktop's geospatial calculations. But in this case, I'm going to simplify the join, and I'm going to do that by using a pivot. I'm going to take my origin and destination and turn that into a single column. So I'll keep it as columns to rows. I'll take my my origin and my destination, and I'll drag those in here. Notice now that I have 2 new columns. One is pivot 1 names, one is pivot 1 values. This, actually I'll rename it here, a little bit easier to see. This is my airport code. And this is my route point. Is it a destination point or an origin point? Now, in doing this, I have duplicated each row, because if I originally had 1 row, it had the origin and destination. Now I've turned that into 2 rows, 1 row for origin, 1 row for destination. So I've got to be a little bit careful if I try to sum up the ticket prices, or count the number of records. I can't assume that that's the number of flights. Ticket prices are going to be duplicated. So I've restructured it for one kind of analysis, but I've got to be careful of how I use it in Tableau Prep or in Tableau Desktop. But now I've made it easy to take this airports and join it. So if I join, Tableau Prep automatically looks for the same column name, same column type, and it's going to make its best guess. If it got it wrong, I can remove the column. I can add additional columns, tell it no, actually it was passengers that should have matched, but in this case it got it right. I can define the join type just by clicking here in the Venn diagram, turn it into a right join, full outer join, left join, however I want, just by clicking. So there's a left join. There's the inner join. Inner join is fine because I look down here and I see, you know, originally I had 9,000 records coming from that pivot. It found matches with 32. There were over 1,000 records that it didn't match with, but that's okay. As long as I end up with all of my records from the left-hand side, in the end, I'm good to go. If I really want to feel comfortable, I might turn it into a left join, but the inner join's working fine as well. So now I'm ready to take this to Tableau and see what I can do there. So I'm going to create an output file. I've got lots of options for output. Tableau continues to add new options here. Originally, it was just a file. Then they said, oh, you can also publish your data source to Tableau server or Tableau online now. And then in the most recent release, they said now you can update a table in the database, or you can create a new table in the database. So all kinds of options. For a file, which is what I'm going to do here, I even have other options. I can use an extract or a CSV file. Definitely the hyper extract is going to be more performant, more efficient, smaller in size probably. But a lot of times I actually like going to a CSV because I can have a CSV open in Tableau Desktop and then realize, oh wait, I needed to go back and tweak something in Prep. If it's a hyper, Tableau Desktop locks the file and then, or Tableau Desktop locks the file, then Tableau Prep says, oh, I can't write to it. But the CSV, it can write to it even while I've got it open elsewhere, and that works out really well. So let me browse to find a file. I've actually already created it previously, but we'll replace it. I'll say yes and run the flow. I can have more than one output here. I've only got one output, but I'm going to replace that one. It runs. It'll tell me briefly how many rows it had, and then it tells me it's done. And then I'm ready to go to Tableau Desktop and take a look at what I've got. So real quickly, we'll take a look. While it's doing that, let's go find the file. I placed it here, just in the default directory. And I'll take that file that we just created, drag and drop it onto Tableau Desktop. And I see my data source here. And now I've got everything that I might have wanted. I've got my latitude and longitude. I'm actually going to treat those as dimensions, just so I can get, and I always do that, I always put them in the wrong order. So we'll flip them. There's all my airports. So I treated them as dimensions so that they can slice it up and give me a mark at each unique latitude and longitude. And now I can take my mark type, change it to a line, and I don't want it to draw a line like that. It's just drawing left to right. That works for a time series or some other type of visualization. But here, what I want to know actually is on the route itself, did it find it? So there's that, and then let's take the route point, put that on color. No, attribute. Again, I don't want it to slice it up, but if I take that route point and tell it that that's on there as well, now notice I get from my destination to each endpoint, I can start to look at that, and I can start to really understand the data itself. Again, any dimension, any other dimension, is going to start to break it up. But if I change it to attribute, now I've got my labels on there, and I'm starting to see all of the different flights that my employees took, and I can start to analyze these routes and do all kinds of interesting discoveries there. But that's just an introduction to Tableau Prep. It's powerful. It allows you to do a lot. It allows you to tame your messy dragons and clean them up and get them ready for analysis.
That was great. Thank you, Joshua. So if there's any questions for Joshua or in and around Tableau Prep, please go ahead and put that in the Q&A panel. We'll address that. One of the things that hopefully maybe you can cover quickly, if you're using Tableau online and you've got, you want to publish flows, how does that differ? How does that work in relation to server?
Yeah, so Tableau Prep Conductor allows you to publish a flow to Tableau Server, but it is an add-on to Tableau Server. So it's something you'd want to talk to your Tableau rep about to understand the licensing requirements and some of that, which is even over my pay grade. But it is a very powerful possibility for creating a flow and then automating it through Tableau Server. And you can have it run on a schedule. You can have it publishing a data source that workbooks across your organization use. So it's a very powerful thing. If you don't have Tableau Prep Conductor, there are some other options for automating it with the command line. So there's a command line interface that you can run Tableau Prep with, and that will give you some possibilities as well. But Tableau Prep Conductor is a great way to automate it.
All right. Sounds good. Okay. Thank you again. I know we're at time. Just have a couple of things I want to share. So we've got some Tableau resources. Again, all these slide decks and the links will be available. Community activities for those of you that are brand new. We want to make sure that you're involved and get engaged. Got some great things out there with Makeover Monday, Workout Wednesday, Iron Quest, prep for Ironviz. Talked a lot about Tableau Prep. There's a great community activity that you can get engaged with, Prep and Data. Viz for Social Good, Sports Viz Sunday, Project Health Viz, and many, many more. So get onto the Tableau community website, get engaged, join a local virtual user group. If you do want to connect with us, both Phoenix and Tucson, we've got our information here. Go ahead and take note. And again, thank you all for attending. Please do subscribe. Go to usergroups.tableau.com. I want to thank Ken, thank Joshua, thank Tucson, Christian, Talia, Nicole. Not going to be here, but thank you all. Christian, anything you want to add?
Not at all, Mike. I just echo what you had said. Thank you all for attending, and we'll see you next time around.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Take care.